as did his illustrious imperial forebearers, including the typical Babylonian Empire of antiquity. While the prophet Daniel was in Babylon, he was inspired to interpret a series of dreams that pictured the succession of world powers from the time of Babylon until Christ's kingdom takes complete control. In the second chapter of Daniel, the king of Babylon was given a divinely inspired dream of an immense metallic image. According to Daniel's interpretation, the head of gold represented the king of Babylon himself, Nebuchadnezzar. The silver breast and arms, bronze belly and thighs, iron legs and feet mixed with an amalgam of iron and clay, each represent a succeeding empire in the timeline. In time, the image is struck in its iron and clay feet and crushed to dust by a stone cut out of a mountain, which Daniel explained represented God's kingdom. Logically, the silver represents the Medo-Persian Empire. The belly and thighs of copper symbolize Greece, which Daniel went on to foretell by name, and the iron legs represent Rome. But what about the feet, composed of iron and molded clay? What do they represent? The Watchtower says that the feet and toes of the image represent, quote, a politically divided world. One problem with the Watchtower's interpretation is that the legs of iron supposedly not only represent the Roman Empire, but also the British Empire, as well as the United States. Contradictorily, though, according to the Watchtower, an indescript kingdom made up of various nations composing the kingdom of a politically divided world is also ruling, along with the Roman Anglo-American kingdom. But that violates the natural progression of kingdoms presented in the prophetic dream, since the Anglo-American king is still very much in control. Jehovah's Witnesses should also take note of the fact that the Watchtower's interpretation of the second chapter of Daniel makes no allowance for an eighth king. While it is true that we live in a politically divided world, in keeping with the meaning of the composite image, the political divide must, of necessity, be the result of a political division that exists between two world powers. True history reveals that the world is divided between the two antagonistic systems embodied in the Anglo-American dual world power of our modern era. The iron and clay feet perfectly symbolize that union. The iron typifies the imperial rule handed down from the Roman Empire, perpetuated by the Roman Catholic hierarchy all down through the Middle Ages, expressed then in the form of the feudal system. Later, the iron-like imperial form of rulership was extended globally by means of European colonialism, and finally, of all the colonial powers, the London-centered British Empire emerged in the late 1700s as the most dominant. The clay represents the republican form of government, originally championed by the United States. As the prophecy says, the rulership of the kingdom will be mixed with the offspring of mankind. Clay being a fitting symbol of mankind, since, as the Bible says, man was created from the dust, or clay of the earth. For the first time in history, America provided a government by the people and for the people. Hence, the rule imposed by an elitist oligarchy became mixed with the offspring of mankind. But the unnatural fusion of iron and clay does not stick together, and that is reflected in the fact that the Anglo-American dual world power is an unworkable union of incompatible systems. But what does the composite colossal image itself represent? It seems most fitting that it symbolizes the eighth king of biblical prophecy, which is to be established upon the power of the soon-to-collapse Anglo-American dual world empire, symbolized by the iron and clay feet of the image that serves as its pedestal. The image itself, in its totality, with its head of gold, represents what might best be described as the Neo-Babylonian Empire of global government. The 13th chapter of Revelation picks up on the symbolisms of the prophecy of Daniel, depicting a composite beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, having the body of a leopard, but the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion. The 7 heads of the beast also represent 7 successive kingdoms or empires, and Satan the devil is said to give the beast its power and authority. And in the 17th chapter of Revelation, we are told that the beast itself represents the last king, and 8th king that springs from the 7. In the 17th chapter of Revelation, the angel explained the mystery to John, telling him that 5 kings had already fallen. 1 king was in existence in the 1st century, obviously Rome, and 1 king, not counting the 8th, had not yet come on the scene back then. The king that did not exist when Revelation was written is the modern-day Anglo-American dual world power. The 13th chapter of Revelation foretells that one of the beast's 7 heads experiences a sword stroke, but then miraculously recovers. And after its seeming resurrection from the abyss of death, the beast compels all mankind, under pain of death, to worship an image of itself and receive the 666 mark of doom. What do these things portend for the future? Well, according to the Watchtower, the visions of Revelation have already been realized in modern times. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the 7th head of the beast, representing the Anglo-American duo, received its foretold mortal head wound back during the First World War. However, that interpretation is not in accord with reality. After all, Great Britain and the United States were victorious. It is true that Great Britain suffered an appalling number of casualties, but that's the nature of war. Besides, the First World War was not even fought on the British Isles. The cities of Great Britain were not devastated. The war was largely fought on the European mainland. The massive British Empire did not dissolve either. And furthermore, neither the long-standing British monarchy nor the parliamentarian government suffered collapse. Neither did the United States suffer anything that could be considered comparable to the foretold sword stroke. As a matter of fact, the United States suffered far more casualties in the American Civil War, and afterwards in the Second World War, than it did in the First World War. And the American homeland and government were in no way staggered during America's brief involvement in the First World War. What is more, the prophecy of Revelation indicates that the death and revival of the beast initiates a period of judgment, and that everyone, without exception, who accepts the mark of the beast will ultimately be condemned by God. The 666 symbolizes God's irreversible judgment. Yet the Watchtower teaches that mankind has already received the mark of the beast. Obviously, though, that simply cannot be true. The sobering truth is the death stroke upon the 7th head of the beast has not occurred yet. That means that the leading nations of this world are facing an unprecedented and unanticipated calamity. What we are soon to be confronted with is the sudden collapse of the leading nations of the world making up what is known as the Anglo-American dual world power. But from the ashes of their demise will arise Satan's new world order, most likely embodied in the already existing bureaucratic shell of the United Nations. But gone will be the democratic system. Gone will be the republican form of government. Gone will be the constitutionally protected human rights. Gone will be freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion. The 8th king will control everything, including the world's nuclear arsenals, as well as the monetary system that will be set up in the aftermath of the collapse of the U.S. dollar system, so that no one will be able to buy or sell or obtain life's provisions without bending their knee to the image of the beast. Any nation or individual that dares to defy the dictates of the beast will be mercilessly dispatched. all indications are that the last hour of the eighth king and the new world order has approached. The windstorm of Jehovah is about to be unleashed.